And I believe we are live. This is a true live Bruins beat. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. We're presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 off that first purchase. Terms apply. We're also presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Connor, what is up?
Evan, I'm here. How are you doing?
Interesting times. But can't say surprising times either. You look at Jim Montgomery fired by the Bruins this afternoon, came out around 4:20-ish. Bruins fired Jim Montgomery. Joe Sacco promoted as the interim head coach. He was the associate head coach. He was given that title over the summer. Been with the organization since 2014. Just sort of your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think it was all but inevitable when you look at that result on Monday against the Blue Jackets. Felt like a new low, and there's been a lot of lows this year in terms of these games where it feels like this team has completely bottomed out and hasn't really shown much of anything. But to lose in that manner to a team like Columbus that entered the game with one win in November, the same low event, listless hockey, a lot of lack of skill, which we all I think are well aware of now in terms of roster construction, and we'll obviously discuss that later on. But lack of will as well in terms of not doing enough, not making simple plays, fumbling the puck. All the things that you've seen from the Bruins teams throughout the year, it feels like something had to give, right? And I think you look at where the blame goes. I think some of it falls on Montgomery, obviously, in terms of not getting this team ready to go. But this is the first step in terms of what you got to do to try to give your team a kick in the ass. And you can't fire the players, right? You can't trade out 6 guys or something like that. So what has to be the result? It's moving on from Montgomery, a guy that's accomplished a lot here, but you look at the options available to the Bruins and the lack of results that you've seen there. I do think it's something where this is the first step. But again, that being said, now the pressure ramps up on Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, right? Like Jim Montgomery was the first guy up in terms of who's going to take the blame and pay the consequences for it. Now it falls on the guys that have assembled this roster that is underachieved to an extreme degree. They're the next ones up, and it's going to fall on them in terms of their next moves, and especially the players themselves to dig the team out of this, because right now it cost a good head coach a job in the NHL.
Yeah, I obviously, was it the right move? Yes. I mean, they needed a change. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's kind of been obvious for the last couple weeks, but it's not all his fault. And ultimately, this lies on the players. I mean, this roster, and this is another thing we've said for weeks. This is sort of an extension of what we've said for weeks. Is this roster just bad? And the answer is probably yeah. Like it looks like it, doesn't it? I mean, the amount of guys underperforming, and coaches don't just get fired out of the blue. Obviously, 8-9-3 start for Montgomery. He's also a lame duck coach. They didn't re-up him before the start of the year. But I mean, just the sheer number of guys underperforming through the first month, and not just underperforming, but like completely missing the mark. I mean, Jay Fresh just tweeted out some of the player cards of guys like Beecher and Lindholm and Coyle and Zaka, and they are embarrassingly bad. And again, like just the sheer number of guys that are not coming close to doing their job. I mean, again, they got booed off the ice Monday night, 5-1 loss to Columbus. And, again, it goes deeper than just the head coach. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about is this runs deeper than the head coach. And I do feel, happy for Joe Sacco, obviously. He's a local guy from Medford, went to BU, played at Medford High, like has been here for 10 years now, like has obviously earned another shot at being a head coach. Yes, that's right. A Terrier, a big day for the Terriers for you. But again, I don't think this is going to be the turnaround you saw when Bruce Cassidy took over. And it was like, all right, he just kind of lit a fire under the roster. I mean, they seem helpless. And that's where, like, I do feel for Joe Sacco a little bit in terms of like, this is a hard situation to try to take control of because, you've heard the Elliot Friedman reports about, the Swayman contract kind of looming large and they were behind after training camp and all these different things. And you got to step into that. I mean, and Diver was saying this to me last week on this podcast of like, what difference is a new guy going to make? And I just, they had to do this, obviously, but this is not they're 10-0 in their next 10 games and they're in second place and they're in a good spot. Like I think this is much deeper in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, you look at the turnaround they had under Cassidy. Yes, that was a team that was underperforming, and you could make the case that the time had come at that point for a guy that had been there for a long time, and Claude Julien. And again, it's branching off from what we've seen the last couple of years in the NHL, where guys have such a short shelf life. Felt like probably time had come there, but with Bruce Cassidy coming in, a guy who gets put up to the Bruins coaching staff that year, a guy that had a little bit of a different approach from especially a guy like Claude Julien. You could make the case that him jumping in, changing things around with that group, and taking over roster that, as you said, like they had really kind of, I think, plateaued under Julien, but still had Bergeron, you had Krejci, you had David Pastrnak, who was a budding superstar. You had guys, in the pipeline at least of, those before like 2015 really took hold, but you had like DeBrusque was a guy that was coming up. You had McAvoy. Felt like that was a team that, again, was at the tail end.
Anders Bjork was a big prospect back then.
Exactly. So, I mean, you look at that team, were they underperforming? Yes. Did they need a change in voice? Yes. But that felt like they were at the end of that kind of really arduous retool that they were in, as opposed to a full-on rebuild. This team, again, as you said, a lot tougher because you look at this team, and beyond the fact you've got, your team is missing a lot of depth. You have a lot of guys that aren't pulling their weight. It's not like there's just one issue with this team, right? It's not like you look at the power play and like, the power play is killing them, which it is, right? But
oh boy,
that's not the only fix. But that's not the only fix,
it?
Right? Is that going to fix like the lazy passes going into the middle of the ice that are getting picked off? Are you looking at a situation here where the Bruins are trying to, find a spark or anything like that? Yeah, like maybe that helps them get, the kick in the ass that you're looking for. But is it enough in terms of just the personnel in place that these players, where the onus is going to fall on them, that they're going to dig themselves out of it? Like maybe, the Bruins, I think, are banking on the fact that a new voice kind of steps in and takes over. But I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case with the talent or maybe lack thereof that is on this current team. You don't have 4 or 5 guys waiting in the wings ready to break through. You have guys who have a track record, right, of a Pastrnak and a McAvoy, and they've all underperformed. Elias Lindholm's underperformed. Jeremy Swayman's underperformed. But you still have way too many guys across the roster that are either in elevated spots where they probably should be a line or two below where they are, or guys that are so lost in their own game that they're not, like, look at Elias Lindholm. Like, can he be a better player? Yeah, of course. But, like, are you expecting just because Joe Sacco's in there, he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to go back to not even the 42 goal Lindholm, but the guy that was you hoped going into the year, what do we say, like 60-point two-way forward? That's kind of what you're banking on.
I also think they're teetering with this roster because, as you said, like you have so many guys. You have your Fredericks and your Geekies and your Marchands that are a year on the last year of their deal, but then you've got a lot of money tied up in Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov and Jeremy Swayman. And again, Swayman, I think, missed training camp, which we can get into in a bit on sort of how bad that was all handled at the time, which we again talked a lot about at the time. But you have a lot of money tied up in guys for a long time. And that's why I see some people saying blow this whole thing up. I don't think it's that easy.
You are littered with no movement clauses. You have the hand you're dealt. Like, you can't do it. People need to stop.
You can't. That's the other part.
Like, I don't know if you want to hear that. I don't know if you want to hear that because that sounds even worse. But that's the hand you're dealt. So people can stop with saying you just trade the whole roster because it ain't that easy.
You can't. It is impossible to do so, as you said, because of the no moves and the no trades and things like that. And that's why we'll get into trades in a little bit. You kind of have to work with what you have. And I think that the other thing is like for Sweeney and Neely, I mean, Montgomery's gone now. The first, the first axe has come down. They have to turn this around because as everybody knows, once the Bruins start missing the playoffs, like I see a lot of people saying they need to fire Sweeney. They need to fire Sweeney. And clearly the roster moves this offseason in the direction of let's out Panther the Panthers isn't working. It's not working. I know there's still time left in the year, but it isn't working. I get that. And Elias Lindholm, by the way, we were all on board with that signing. And again, it has only been a month. So, little leeway. But if they start missing the playoffs, like that's when the Sweeney and Neely stuff would come down. Like, and I see it. People are saying, stop defending Sweeney. We're not.
Yeah, Ryan's really got a hair across his ass, huh?
Ryan's
Jesus
pissed.
Christ, dude.
Ryan's pissed. But what I will say, and we're replying to comments today. Ownership gave Sweeney and Neely like 5 out of 5 stars at the preseason press conference. So they love them. Neely and Sweeney, by the way, are best friends. They, so like, again, I don't think Neely's going to, just come out and fire Sweeney after this start. And they also have a lot of money tied up in this roster. That's the other part too. So that's why, like, if they're firing Sweeney and Neely, if they completely miss the playoffs, or maybe it's not even just one missed playoffs. Maybe it's 2. And I'm not saying that's right, by the way. I'm saying that that's what I think will happen if they miss the playoffs. Even just after this year. Like, I don't think it happens immediately. I think it's longer down the road.
What did Charlie Jacobs say before we even spoke during the end of the season availability last year? He literally went out and said he had full support of Cam Neely and Don Sweeney. Before we even asked, like, looking at the team.
And we're not saying that's right. We're also not saying that that's like the right thing either. We're just saying what happened.
I'm saying what the ownership said. That was a mandate dictated from ownership in terms of what their expectations were. That was before we even asked. So for people asking why the Bruins aren't firing Sweeney and Neely, it's from ownership. They've given them a seal of approval before we even asked them questions last year. So if you want to talk about why that hasn't happened, that's where it is, guys. Like, that is where it's all coming from. Going into last year or this upcoming season, we were looking at Montgomery and you looked at the fact that he didn't have an extension. We saw that was the obvious one where it's like, what are you going to do there? We thought that was going to be most of the questions. But Jacobs to come out and pretty much say, like, hey, we're sticking with, we have full faith in Sweeney and Neely. That's where their mindset is right now. Now, will that change if they don't make the playoffs? Will that change if the product that's on the ice, which has been terrible all season long, is that going to stay in place if this team misses the playoffs? Probably not. That's when the consequences are going to come. But I don't think you're going to see that until you get to the end of the year. I don't see the ownership group making those kind of seismic moves before then. That's just their approach going into this year.
No, they won't. And again, the coach is the easiest one to do, and that's what happened here. And I think that, something else that should be noted is I remember when Bruce Cassidy got fired. I think it wasn't understood how much he had lost the locker room. We can get into kind of the players and their response because that's obviously a major storyline with this. But we don't know the inner workings of what happened with Montgomery there. We don't yet. I'm curious if stuff comes out. I'm curious if things leak out or whatever. But we don't quite know yet how players felt and this and that, which again we will get into because I think that why don't we do it now? Why don't we do it now, Connor? Let's do it now. We'll do it live. Connor. Obviously, there's a lot of blame to be passed around, and I think the players are number one in terms of who you're going to blame. But I don't think it's just for the play on the ice. This is 2 coaches in 3 years, and they've been 2 extremely successful coaches. I mean, the everyone's tweeting the records. I don't have it right in front of me, but like Jim Montgomery's had an incredible record here. Won a Jack Adams. Bruce Cassidy had an incredible record here. Won a Jack Adams. And yes, coaches are hired to be fired, but Bruce Cassidy was, I think, 5 seasons, and Montgomery didn't even hit halfway through his 3rd. So again, this core, right? Like we talk and we hear it all the time. We've heard it for 2 decades now. This Bruins culture. Oh, everybody wants to come here. Every player, they want to be a part of. We know what's going on in Boston. That culture dead? Because I got to be honest, Connor, like, okay, so they send Cassidy packing because he's too tough on them. All right. They bring in Montgomery, who brings this positive, different approach or a little bit different. They kick him out after not even 2.5 years. And again, I go back to like, this leadership group: Pasternak, McAvoy, Coyle, throw Carlo in there. I think there's legitimate questions about those guys. I'm not saying trade them, which again, we can get into Coyle and Carlo, but like that's the other part of it where it's like the leadership element, continuing this culture. I don't know how it exists if you're turning over coaches like this. Stable organizations don't do this, and they're doing this.
Yeah, no, there's a legitimate question to be asked about just like the fortitude of this team and the way they're playing. Because as you said, the whole narrative around Bruce Cassidy is that message had gone stale, wasn't doing enough to encourage the players, wasn't getting enough out of the younger players. All things was way too hard on them. All right, you opt for a different voice there in Montgomery, and the results speak for themselves. And then you get to a point where, like Jim Montgomery at the tail end of it is taking his team to task, holding them accountable like a head coach should, of like calling up Brad Marchand, who committed a shitty turnover in Utah and got called out for it, for benching David Pastrnak, who's had multiple games where he's not done anything at all in terms of generating offense. Like, and you look at just the lack of respect team, like that game on Monday against Columbus, watching from up top, like there's multiple times where you're seeing it play out, and I'm thinking to myself, like, are they trying to get him fired? Are they trying to get their head coach fired? Because whether it's like the needless turnovers, David Pastrnak, your offensive conduit, the guy you're trusting to drag you along, getting 0 shots on goal, like so many guys just not pulling on the rope and responding in defense of their head coach. The guy that, again, they wanted in terms of a guy that was going to bring a lighter tone and a different mindset from big bad Bruce Cassidy, who now has a cup in Las Vegas, right? So I just think you look at the way the Bruins have approached the players and the lack of response and just how awful the product has been on the ice. The lack of response, the lack of accountability. And that's something even Brad Marchand mentioned after the game on Monday. He was talking about the power play in particular, but said that guys need to be more accountable and people have to be held accountable there. Like, are you talking about, like, that's not when you look at a guy like Morgan Geekie or Trent Frederick or these guys that have to be much better, like, obviously. But when you're looking at guys that need to be held accountable on the power play, are you looking at David Pastrnak? Are you looking at Charlie McAvoy, who has not done much of anything up top on that power play unit? I think that's something where, yeah, there's definite concerns about just the makeup of this team and the fortitude they have, because the Bruins have kind of let the players, dictate a lot of what's going on, and they've leaned on that culture that has been instilled since Chara and Recchi and Bergeron, but those guys aren't there anymore. And like, again, Marchand tries to, I think, do what he can, but if he's the only guy listening, the only guy setting the tone, you're going to have a pretty rudderless team. What do you know? This team looks pretty friggin' rudderless right now.
That's the thing. And I think you look at some of the comments made, Montgomery Monday night saying, oh, it's, for Swayman missing training camp. Well, it doesn't help when you miss training camp. And just, you mentioned Marchand's comments. I wonder about that next core that we talk about all the time. And again, like I still believe that Pastrnak, McAvoy, Swayman are too talented to trade. I know, like people are advocating trade them, blow it all up. That's impossible. That is really hard to do. And you know what? I understand that people are frustrated right now, and I don't want to sound like I'm just, I have my Bruins colored glasses on, but this sucks, right? This is unwatchable. This is not fun. Think about if they completely bottomed out. Think about for a second if they completely bottomed out. I saw someone say, like, we need a 5-year rebuild. You have fun with your 5-year rebuild. Now, retool, you want to retool. I think that's what you go for. I think that's what you go for on this. I think that this rest of the season, yep, you can spend the next month or two trying to get back on track. But when push comes to shove, if you can trade someone and get a bunch of picks back or whatever, like, I'm for it. I'm for it.
I mean, you look at it, Evan, right? For people that want the full retool and get, the top 5 picks and all that stuff, like, you worry that it's going to be a prolonged stretch of futility and miserable seasons where you only have 1 or 2 positives to build off of. But listen, it is the Bruins. They've got money. They're a proud Original Six franchise. Like, that won't happen to them when they've got a committed ownership group, committed fans. It doesn't happen. Just like how it hasn't happened with the Montreal Canadiens or the Detroit Red Wings, who have been dog shit. So if you want a full retool, you want to look at James Hagan highlights and hope that he falls to you. This is your fault, by the way, Evan.
I know. Look at
You
what I
wanna look
did.
you
I've
you
done
want
all this.
you wanna look at McKenna next year or someone like that? Go for it. Like, maybe that works out, but it's a lot of teams that are pretty friggin' motivated to get back into contention that are treading water or straight up drowning right now if you want to retool. So have fun if that's what you want. The Bruins, it's not going to be an option for them.
That's why this town. I mean, and like I'm with you. I go nuts.
And Chicago, yeah. Sorry, someone else mentions the Blackhawks as well.
The Blackhawks, and
how's Bedard working out for them? Pretty damn good player.
It doesn't matter. Like that's again. Like
what's Buffalo doing?
Buffalo, San Jose, Anaheim. You want to be Anaheim? Do you want to be
Look at all that
Anaheim?
skill, though, man. You see what Zagras does? He does his little lacrosse goals on NHL.
He's like
imagine that dude in Boston.
Well, Hags has been pushing for it forever. I've been seeing all these clips on Twitter of Zegras just like completely just like depressed in Anaheim about how much he hates it because the fun has been drained out or whatever. Like this town, and this is why we love Bruins fans, and you guys are awesome. You're passionate. You get mad when the team loses one game or two games in a row. Imagine where you are at the bottom for years. That is so unwatchable. Like it sucks. It's not fun. And yeah, maybe 10 years down the road, you land a couple high-end guys. That's years. You have to go through years of that crap. So again, like the retool, sure. And we'll get into trades and stuff because I think that that's very legitimate, and Marchand and all that stuff. And we've been saying that for a few weeks of Frederick. Frederick's a perfect example. Do you think about Marchand? Like all these different things. But first, Connor, on a lighter note, quick word from our friends at Prize Picks. It's Prize Picks time. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect, and you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prize Picks, they put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. And I got to say, Connor, I was proud of myself. That was my case during the Tyson-Paul fight this past weekend. I combined Mike Tyson. I combined Mike Tyson more than 0.5 punches, a lot of P's, and Amanda Serrano more than 152.5 punches. And of course, I hit it, and I got my money very quickly. And again, keeping it hockey, if you feel that Joe Sacco is what this team needs, and you feel David Pastrnak's going to start scoring more, pick him more than 0.5 goals, or Brad Marchand more than 0.5 points in a game. You go for it. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So back to this. I was going through, and you think about this Bruins roster. We mentioned guys like McAvoy having to step up and be a leader, and Pastrnak and Coyle and Carlo, and they just haven't been. Since 2023, I went back and looked. These are the veteran leaders / just vets on the roster that they have lost since Swayman to give up.
I'm cracking up at Kevin's comment.
Yeah, I get. Watch, the Bruins will lose 4-1 to Utah. It's coming. It is absolutely happening. But so since 2023, on a more serious note, since 2023, Kevin, you got us all off track. Since 2023, these are the veterans / veteran leaders the Bruins have lost: Patrice Bergeron, Nick Foligno, Taylor Hall, David Krejci, Craig Smith, Tomas Nosek, Chris Wagner. I threw Jake DeBrusk in there for multiple reasons. Pat Maroon, Kevin Shattenkirk, Linus Olmark, James Van Riemsdyk. Now, I'm not saying James Van Riemsdyk is your captain, but these are guys who take some of the leadership. I mean, Kevin Shattenkirk in that series, I think against the Leafs last year, stepped up, made a big speech, and they ended up winning Game 7. Like, There are these little things. Who do they have now outside of Marchand that has that? Like, I think it's a real leadership vacuum, and it can't all fall on Brad Marchand.
Yeah, no, exactly. I was, as you were mentioning there, like you look at a guy like Shattenkirk, like third pairing D was like in and out of the lineup even in the playoffs, but made an impact in terms of that speech ahead of Game 7 against Toronto. You look at like Pat Maroon, who like barely played during the regular season, coming back from that back injury, but dude like spoke after, before and after like almost every game in the playoffs. Why? Because it's a guy that's won 3 cups, that has been through a whole bunch of battles, knows what to expect, and that's a guy that, when the going gets tough, whether it's an extended, I wouldn't say lull, because the Bruins right now don't look like they're coming out of a lull, but whatever this awful stretch is, that's a guy you turn to in terms of accountability, especially within your own room. Pat Maroon's a guy you talk to when the Panthers are beating the crap out of you in a playoff game. You look to for a response or to steady kind of your overall game. That's why like a guy like Foligno, has had a lot of value over the last couple of years. That's why he was such a dependable guy in the room, even if he had kind of a lost year due to injuries. So, yeah, as you said, like beyond like Marchand, who's still like in this role where, he's obviously been tenured. He's, played under or alongside Char and Bergeron and these guys. But after that, where does it fall? Like you've got veterans, you've got guys who have been here for a while. You've got the Coyles and the Kahlos, but it almost feels like, yeah, you need like a guy that is, been outside of the organization, who's been through a lot of battles that, maybe doesn't fix your scoring issues per se, right? But like you look at like the Panthers getting like Kyle Okposo, who I know is retired, but those are the guys that teams that, that are prioritized and are valued in the room. Like I feel like they're missing 2 or 3 of those guys, which is not good when, again, I don't know who you're signing on the free agent market that has that kind of profile of that seniority and that experience. But yeah, I do think that's been missing. And that's something that maybe we all took for granted last year as we looked at the Bruins. And yes, they were the Moneyball Bruins. They were a whole bunch of just plugging in guys with little money available. But you could see why these guys had value, even if maybe it didn't translate on the score sheet. That accountability, that intensity, that steadying presence during the ups and downs of a game, a series, a week of regular season action, a month, what have you. That is something that is valued. And right now it feels like there's not a lot of that steadying presence on the Bruins right now, whether it's the play on the ice or what you're hearing afterwards. After every game, it's been a lot of the same kind of script in there. They're saying the right things. They're saying there's no excuse for it, but you need like someone like Pat Maroon or Nick Foligno come in and rattle some cages. You're not getting any of that right now from anyone in that room.
You aren't. And I think that's the biggest thing of, you can say this over and over again, and you can say, Charlie Coyle, Monday night, we need to be more vocal and step up and say things. They still are not winning board battles. They're still not hustling to far post. They're still not covering guys. I mean, the game over the weekend, I'm blanking on who they played Saturday. The games are so boring.
It all comes together now.
Who was it?
Blues.
I don't who Blues. Yes. The goals in front, like just not covering guys, and that's it. And just the lack of discipline, and you even see like there was a play Monday night against the Blue Jackets where Peak and Zadorov are passing back and forth to each other in front of their own net, kind of just slowly moving into their own zone. And Columbus is like, oh, hell yeah, we're just going to intercept this and get a scoring chance out of it. And like, it just continued. And you look at some of the offseason signings and they obviously lost a lot of vets, and that, yes, they got better with Elias Lindholm on paper. They got better on paper with Nikita Zadorov, who has been horrific through 1 month. I mean, that like him and Lindholm, but Zadorov stuff has been bad. And I think a little very concerning. But again, like Max Jones, like, again, they tried to be the Panthers, Riley Tufte. I know I'm forgetting people. But just, size and veteran leadership and stuff didn't really matter. And I just, it's coming back to bite them because, again, the Swayman stuff happens. They've been behind the 8 ball since day 1 of camp when they didn't have Swayman. He didn't participate in training camp. I texted you and Ty Anderson this morning. Like, it's almost like, the Swayman stuff plus the fact they let their coach go in the season as a lame duck didn't end well. I mean, either give Montgomery an extension or don't, or fire him, which they fired him. But to enter the year in with no deal for him, I don't like. What was the end game with Montgomery? That was the other part. Like,
yeah. I
what were you
mean,
hoping?
that's the whole thing. Is like maybe his fate was sealed already going into the year in terms of not giving him a contract. But even going back to what you said about like the construction of this roster, and yeah, they got bigger, stronger, meaner, whatever you want to say. It hasn't led to any results in the regular season, and you can't build a team for the playoffs if they're not even going to make the playoffs, right? But you also look at what they all said during the end of season availability in terms of what this team needed, and it's stuff that makes you think, all right, they want to be like the Panthers, but the Panthers also like aren't a group of like hulking 6'5" guys, right?
No.
Like what Sweeney and Neely both said. Neely mentioned they needed to get faster. That was he on is quoted that they needed to get faster, and Sweeney mentioned secondary scoring. And what did they do? They got a whole lot slower, and they let all their secondary scoring leave in free agency. And again, rolled the dice on a lot of guys on the team coming up for career years that were banking on that being the norm. And that's a whole lot of risk to invite in terms of a team that, again, when you add in the fact that they're losing board battles, they're not quick on the puck. Like I feel like the Panthers have just broken this team in terms of like what
Completely.
you prioritize, how you approach things. Because like, yeah, you got like Kachuk, who's a big body and is a shit stirrer. You've got a few bigger guys on that blue line, but like, I think that you look at being, better equipped for the playoffs, and it's like, oh yeah, Zadorov, 6'6", hits like a freight train when you look at like the highlight reels. But like, I don't know, you go to the playoffs. Is Sam Bennett the most intimidating dude? Is he a big guy or anything like that? Or
No.
no? But how does he
No.
play? How does he
He
play?
plays hard. He
Yeah,
plays
and that's what
freaking
you're not
hard.
seeing. And they have so many guys that even if they aren't fitting the profile of 6'3", a bunch of Pat Maroons or anything like that, they have a whole bunch of guys that skate hard, close in on the puck carriers, make things happen, cause chaos. Like, why is it a surprise that the only group of forwards this whole year that have been skating hard, closing in, forcing turnovers, the Kepke, Kastelik, Beecher line? It shouldn't be any surprise. They're the one line that has been pretty solid, at least for a stretch this year. It comes down to guys that are going to play hard, skate hard, and cause chaos. And that's what you need in the regular season. That's what you especially need in the playoffs when a lot of the skill and open ice is really negated. And the Bruins, again, said all the right things in May when you're like, all right, this team's got a lot of money. They seem like they know what this team needs in terms of remaining competitive moving forward. And then kind of shifted gears into a group that is slow to win battles, is slow to puck races, all those things that have them now as this product that I don't even know what to make of it other than it's really friggin' ugly, Evan.
It is ugly. I want to get into sort of what they should do from here. The future of Joe Sacco and sort of what that is going to look like, things like that. But first, game time. So if you want to go to the game or go to any game, there's nothing like watching an NBA or NHL game live. The energy in the building, the sounds on the ice, the court, the memories you make with family, friends, and other fans. It's unmatched. The coolest part is when strangers sitting around you become your best friends. You can make these memories with Game Time because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation just makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. When I use Game Time, I love the flash deals, which help me get discounted prices on really good seats. Plus, who doesn't love Seat Views, which gives a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Connor, what time is it? It's game time.
Game time.
It is, in fact, game time. I'm sure there were many comments saying how much fans are excited to go to Bruins games from now on. I think people are really pumped to go see the local boys play hard, to see the local black and gold. Why not?
Nice riveting game against Utah.
Yeah. I see a lot of stuff happening in the comments, which is fun.
There's a lot of
people
fighting
going at it.
going on. I feel like
Yeah, calm
everyone's
down,
just pissed.
everybody. Calm down. It's one day, all right? It's one bad start to a season. This isn't permanent.
To quote
Everyone will be
Ilya
fine.
Brizgalov, it's just a game. Why you have to be mad?
Yeah, there's worse things, but you know what? Sometimes you got to get your anger out. What to do from here? So we mentioned trades. A lot. I have friends text me being like, "The Bruins are the Blues, the 2019 Blues." Like this is
the worst thing that ever could have happened is that Blues team going on that run. Beyond the fact that they crushed the Bruins' best chance of winning another cup,
yes,
them coming back and making that run is now, I think, dispelled the illusion that you can just suck ass for the first 3 months and be good to go.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
like no, like it's not great if you're the Bruins and you somehow get your act in gear here and start piling on points. You're still going to be in March if all these other teams are playing well, looking at games in hand, all this stuff, because you've been playing like shit for over a month now. Like, it's not great.
NHL stuff is throwing around a lot of comments. Yeah, I did not get him fired, and that is not true. That is untrue. It's funny because like there is that part of you. I think everybody has this where it's like, oh, they could turn it around, and Joe Sacco could. Like he was a Jack Adams finalist in 2010. Like I'm not again. I see a lot of Joe Sacco hate out there, so just giving you the other side. But we talked about this the other day. You only have a certain window to do a retool before you go over the cliff and you have to do a full rebuild. The Penguins right now, by the way, are that team. Penguins are fucked. That team is
really
screwed. That team is in a horrible position. You are not them. You are not them. And I don't think you're really even close because their core is like 39 years old. Your core is not. So like you're in a better spot there. But in terms of a retool, you look at like trade candidates, and I think it was Elliot Friedman who mentioned, Sweeney's trying to work the market, trying to bring in guys. Please do not trade your first round pick. Like, don't be trading your prospects. Don't trade your high picks. But you look at like the roster, right? Like Frederick's the easy one. Last year of his deal has value. Like that to me is an obvious, like we've mentioned like the Tanner Jeannot package. Well, here's a question for you.
Still an insane return. I still, now that like the rumors have sprouted up, I think over Frederick, I keep on looking at that Jeannot trade and be like, how the shit did that happen?
I don't know how Tampa gave
big
up
and tough.
all those picks. Yeah, people get so horny over big and tough guys.
They watch the clips of the hits. They don't watch the 5 seconds of them skating before said hit.
Exactly. So I look at like, Frederick and potentially dealing that. Here's the question though. So we mentioned giving up guys for picks to try and retool or prospects to try and bolster the farm system to also retool. Would you do a player for player swap? Like if there was like when Jake DeBrusk was on the block years ago, it was like, oh, Jake DeBrusk for Mason Appleton, which I never am a fan of, but like it worked in your favor to an extent. Doesn't look great now, but like Eric Holla with Pavel Zacha, that made sense. Would you look for roster players in return, or would you go for picks? I think I would go for picks.
I would look for, right now, what do I think the Bruins are going to do? Because I think what the Bruins are going to do,
they're not going to go for picks. They will
not. I think they've invested too much money in this team, and that's going to lead to a lot of people being really pissed off. But the Bruins and ownership committed a lot of money. They're going to do what they can, at least this year. And again, if they don't make the playoffs, all bets are off in terms of this offseason, in terms of, I think, guys like Sweeney and Neely being taken to task in terms of the direction of this team and where they kind of charted things. But from what the Bruins are probably looking at, yeah, I think you look at what the issue with this team is, and shit, there's a lot. But if you're Sweeney and Neely and you're trying to get things started here, yeah, I think the most obvious thing is you look at player for player swaps and see if you can just shake things up. Does that mean like you're trading? I think Ty Anderson mentioned this yesterday, like a Geeky for like an Anthony Beauvillier, who's also a guy that's underperformed, like just putting a new body in or something like that. Doesn't steal the headline, doesn't do anything like that. But is that someone who just putting a new body in there, shipping a guy out, sends kind of a shot across the bow, like, hey, we got to get our shit in order. It's like, we know the coach is going to get canned. That's what happens to every team. Oh, shit, they're trading Geeky or they're moving Frederick or someone like that. maybe that's when it raises the stakes and the consequences of what playing like shit hockey can do to this team. So, yeah, I don't think the Bruins are going to, unless things completely bottom out and keep on getting worse, and we're in January and they're 10 games under 500, maybe then they adjust their strategy and try to make the most of a lost year and try to do maybe like what the Caps have done this year, where it's like 2 or 3 years of regression, selling off guys when needed. And what do you know? They're kind of back. I don't know. I don't know how they're back, the Caps, this year. I don't know what's going on there, but that's a sign
No
of a
idea.
team that identified when things were going south, were opportunistic in terms of selling off pieces, and they're kind of back in the mix now. They got Ryan Leonard and a few other guys in the mix coming up. It's like you like where they are, even if maybe they're not going to be a powerhouse, they're going to be in the mix again, which is what you want. If they continue to tread water or downright struggle like they have, the Bruins, that is, maybe then they adjust their strategy. But for now, I still think it's something where they're going to look more for player moves if they have to continue to shake things up, which again, maybe Sacco gives them a little bit of a jolt, but you look at this team, look at how they've underperformed, the players themselves that aren't pulling their weight. Feels like another shoe has to drop in terms of sending the message that what's gone on these last 6+ weeks, completely unacceptable.
Yeah, you can't just do the coach. You can't. And Fred, we've talked a lot about Frederick, but like two others I think are interesting. Like Charlie Coyle's name has been kind of tossed around. Pavel Zacha. I can't see them dealing because that is Pasternak's guy. And Pasternak's here a lot, but
He's playing like shit. So
he is playing like shit. I agree. But I also think like Pasternak does have some leverage in terms of his contract and all that stuff. I just wonder if, again, like I'd be open to trading anybody on this roster right now other than your three pillar guys. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this, but McAvoy, Pastrnak, and Swayman. I know a lot of people want to trade Swayman now because they're blaming him for this whole season. And yeah, that stuff was completely bungled, but like, I still think like Swayman will even out. It will, he's gonna go back to the middle or better. I mean, he's playing like crap right now. There's no denying that. But anybody else, like I would listen on anybody else. I would. And I don't know what they're getting you. I think Zacha and Coyle, you could get, players like definitely solid players in return, a player or players in return. And I also just wonder, in terms of like in my ideal world, if you're retooling things, you could get like around the deadline, like you get a first for Zacha. You kidding me? That's a top 6 center or left wing. Like I know he's playing like garbage right now, but what he can be. I mean, people forget how much teams pay for mediocre talent around trade deadlines. Like if you really wanted to retool and you wanted to deal Zacha and Frederick and even Geeky, like around the deadline, or even a Coyle, like you would get legitimate things back in return for those guys, I think.
Yeah,
So.
no, exactly. So I think it just falls on, again, I think the roster has to be the next thing that people have to hone in on. And again, like people that are looking for Sweeney and Neely as next guys up, well, the shield is gone now in terms of Montgomery, that the criticism is going to fall on them if they continues to scuttle going on this year. But for right now, in terms of what needs to happen to pull this, to right the ship and get this team rolling, it falls on the players. Like, you can look at this roster and how it's flawed and, not accounting for the regression. I think even accounting for like regression or guys, shooting percentages dropping, stuff like that, that means they drop into like a third place in the Atlantic 1 wild card. And like, they're still in the playoffs as of last night. But like that regression shouldn't equate to what we've seen. Like this is top 5 pick, like rudderless shit hockey.
They're
Like
third in goal differential in the
yeah,
league.
yeah, behind what, the Penguins and the Sharks. Like
In San Jose,
not two teams you want to be in. So like right now, at least right now, we can talk about Sweeney, Neely, and all that stuff, and I think that will get pushed until April and May. It might just be April. This team's not in the playoffs in terms of where the accountability goes. But I think for right now, in terms of the next step, falls on the players. Like Sacco, I think can provide a new voice, can do those things to try to get this team rolling. But Sacco is not going to be the guy that is holding on to the puck, fumbling the puck at the blue line on a power play. Sacco's not the guy taking a shitty high stick in the offensive zone. Sacco's not the guy that's doing D-to-D passes in front of the net that hit off Swayman and lead to a grade A chance for noted powerhouse team, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Like Sacco and the coaching staff can only do so much. Yes, you can put the blame on Sweeney and Neely, and that will be addressed, I think, if this team continues to bottom out. But for right now, if this team has any hope of clawing back, that's gonna be the players themselves got to look themselves in the mirror, being like, well, we just fired Jim Montgomery with our play. Like, what's next? Because if they continue to play like this, it's gonna be a lot of other guys in that room that aren't gonna be here in a couple of months.
No, they won't. And again, like, I get their desire to want to continue to compete because obviously they've put a ton of money into this team. They're spending near the cap. They just signed a bunch of guys in the offseason for big money. But like you've said it before, you want to be like Detroit and just keep extending we're getting in the first round. Oh, we're getting those playoff tickets. Like it always crashes. It always crashes. And if you have to take this year and next, where you're, middle of the pack, just outside the playoffs, but you're drafting a good amount of guys. People are getting on me about saying that like Zacha could get you a first round pick. I think people forget how desperate teams are around the deadline.
Look at the Tanner Jeannot trade.
Like, go look at the freaking past bunch of trade deadlines. Like, Pavel Zacha, I know he is not doing well right now, but there are teams who would give a lot for that around the deadline, who just want a shot at the cup, okay? So, like, is Zacha a first rounder in the middle of the summer? No, probably not. But the market dictates it, and around the deadline, it gets crazy. So that's my response on that. Brad Marchand. Marchand's in the final year of his deal. Obviously has not signed a new one yet. The captain, all that stuff. Again, exactly. Bertuzzi got a first round pick. Evan's right. Thank you, G Walker. I appreciate you. But Marchand to me obviously would get you a lot around the deadline. But I also look at like the leadership vacuum that would create if he left, right? Like if they traded Marchand, just the amount of are McAvoy and Pastrnak ready to potentially be captains? I don't think so. They're not there yet. Clearly, they are not there yet. I mean, this is their second head coach. I'm not saying they themselves have gotten fired, but they have been main guys on the team of coaches that have gotten fired. Two really good coaches, by the way. You can say what you want about Jim Montgomery. Really good head coach who's going to land on his feet somewhere, get a really good job either this year or in the offseason, and probably going to win a cup, given how things went with Cassidy. But again, like, do you want a chance poisoning the culture even more by dealing a guy like Marchand?
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on just if things really bottom out and you're looking at really blowing things up, which I don't think they're going to do. But if it really does hit that point, yeah, like if Marchand's gone, like your next captain, I don't know.
I'd assume that they would give it to McAvoy, but like, I don't think he's ready.
I don't know about that. So like, I think that is a legitimate question as to what exactly this next leadership void is. If you do move on from Marchand, again, maybe if you're accepting you're rebuilding 5 years down the road, maybe that's something that you are addressing. But yeah, I do think that's a legitimate question. If you're looking for a retool and you're going through a few lean years, maybe you keep Marchand around for that transition period. But yeah, I think the bigger question isn't like, oh, like just hold on to Marchand the whole rest of the way. Like, who cares if you get a draft pick or anything like that? No, but I do think if you're trying to foster that next, wave of young talent, when you've got guys like, Poitras coming up or what have you, I think having a guy that will get on players like Marchand, I'd rather have him here than what is the second wave of that leadership group. Because right now, not really that impressed.
No, I agree with you. And then I think the final thing I want to kind of discuss is just sort of Joe Sacco. Gotta give it to Joe Sacco here, the next head coach. Pierre LeBrun came out with a tweet right before we came on, saying that they're they're prepared to give Sacco the full season. This is not just going to be, a month or two, and then they'll bring someone else in. Looks like this is going to be his shot. He's going to have, a chance to be the full-time head coach past this season. Do you think that's the right move? Or does this team need a kick in the ass from the outside?
I mean, again, I think it probably goes and depends on where this team is at, like by end of December, past the new year, in terms of if they respond to Sacco. And again, like you can look at the roster and how underwhelming they've been, how poorly constructed the roster has been in terms of just the outright production, but like they still should be better. Like even if you think like this team is not that great or they're far from what shit we predicted.
God.
I'm not gonna like just completely burn my bold predictions from where they were. I had them in the conference finals, which is not that great looking at it now. But it's gonna fall on the players, as I said earlier. Like who's going to be riding the ship? It's the players executing on the ice, or maybe they aren't. And that's where I think if this team continues to take a step back or stay where they are of winning a game, dropping another one. Like if they go out and beat Utah on Thursday, nice like 4-1 win, we're like, we're back, baby, and then lose on Saturday in Detroit, like 3-0. Like, oh, you right back where you were. Detroit, who just got smoked on the California trip, which there's ever an easy stretch, it's that California trip. So I think you look at just where this team is at. I could see them sticking with Sacco or giving him some rope, but if the players aren't responding again, one, I think it's going to lead to a lot of trades on the roster, and then it's going to see where exactly they are in terms of finding an outside voice. It also depends on maybe who's out there. Like, if the Penguins fire Mike Sullivan, does that change where they are in terms of a guy that's out there? So we'll see how it all kind of plays out.
Yeah, someone just asked if we read the comments, and my answer is yes. And I
sure do. They're right in my face.
They're right in my face. I read them as I'm saying what I'm saying. So then I get sidetracked and forget what I'm saying, and I just start getting distracted by the comments. Someone did say, Pierre Leclerc says the Bruins, their reign is over. It wasn't the coach the problem, but the lack of pure talent. Right before we came on, Dom Luszczyszyn at The Athletic published this really long story questioning, are the Bruins done? Like, are the Bruins fine? Is this every year people predict that the Bruins are not going to be in it? They end up being in it, being really good. And I do think it is a legitimate question. Like, is this the year that things really did catch up to them? The roster catches up to them. I mean, again, we are just over a month into the season. So like there is a world in which Joe Sacco comes in and they are a different team and they are great from here on out and they're in the playoffs and we like great. There is that world. But I think for you and I sitting here on November 19th, how do you believe that that's in this team after watching them for the past month? So like the reason we talk about retooling and outside coaches needing to come in and Sweeney and Neely and all this stuff is because we're going off what has happened. We're going off what they've shown us, and what they've shown us sucks. And I can't get over that. So again, if the Bruins go on to win the cup this year, you can use this as motivation. Oh, they were so against the Bruins, but
if the Bruins post some hype video in friggin' June in my like article saying like, "Are the Bruins bad?" If that's on the front, that's totally fine because
more they were bad.
You. I'll give you full credit if you write the ship, but right now, it's not looking great.
No, it's not. You know who's still out there? Kevin Shattenkirk is still out there. Wonder if that people would be pissed, by the way, if that was like the big roster move, but like good dude, good locker room guy. I don't know. Another vet, like BU Terrier as well. A BU Terrier. Everybody's in the comments saying they should bring back the Bruins that are on the Blackhawks, Corrali, Nolan Chari.
It's like the portal scene from Avengers Endgame. Just all of them joining the team back.
They all come back. Quite the episode. I think we hit on everything.
We need Joakim Nordstrom going through the portal.
Yes. Joakim Nordstrom is going to be what saves this team. Yeah, Bergeron and Chara coming off unobstructed views, just suiting up again. I did love their reactions to all the bad stuff that was happening Monday night. I got a kick out of that. That was great. I'm looking like I think we hit on everything. Montgomery. I mean, again, like Montgomery's going to land somewhere. There's going to be a team that that goes and hires him.
The comment section is now becoming like when you're with your buddies after a few beers at the bar and you're just naming random players.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just
Yes.
doing that. Someone's like Chuck Kobasu.
Did someone say Kobasu?
No, that's my comment. So
I like that. I like that. I'll say bring back Manny Fernandez in net. Replace trade Jeremy Swayman, Manny Fernandez, Yodas Corpusalo tandem. I think that they are set. They'll be cooking, as the kids say. But I do think, McQuaid, Ferentz. James asked an interesting question. Would Gerard Gallant be a good choice? You like Gerard Gallant in terms of a guy to come in. I do think that an outside guy, if Sacco does not work, I think an outside kind of tough guy like that who's going to come in and rattle some cages probably isn't the worst thing that happened to this team.
he's like the prime drink equivalent of like Bruce Cassidy. It's like just a shorter fuse, but it kind of does the same results in terms
like
of
prime, like the Jake Paul drink.
It's a little burst of energy in terms of he's kind of just jumps in somewhere and like he gets results, but he has a very short shelf life. Which if you're the Bruins and you're like looking at more of a retool and you're trying just to right the ship right now as you're trying to bridge through a couple of years and you want to remain in the mix of being competitive, maybe that's a guy you look to. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a guy they do assess moving forward.
Yeah, there's this new thing going around TikTok. It's like a smelling salt in a thing, and you put it up your nose, and you like it's an energy boost.
Mhm.
And I that's like Gerard Gallant. That could be an
Yes.
equivalent to Gerard Gallant, just a little energy boost on that. So yeah, I think that they're not in a good spot. They clearly are not in a good spot by
I
any
wouldn't say
stretch
so.
of the imagination. But it's a tough time. It's a weird time. It'll be interesting to see sort of what they do. Again, Jim Montgomery, hell of a run. Jim Montgomery's tenure is going to be weird. I think when you look back on it, because there were such big highs and there were such low lows. I mean, obviously the end of his time here was a big low. The 2023 playoffs was a low, but like the 23 regular season was a high. Last year's regular season, I thought was his best coaching job overall. So yeah, I mean, he'll be with another team. Another team will pick him up. His son plays prep school hockey in New England. Maybe he'll be a prep school coach for a little bit. Probably not, but it'll be interesting to see. Connor, thank you for doing. Yeah, Claude. Yes, bring back Claude Julien. That would be great. Or that would be bring back Claude. Claude, Bruce, just put everybody that was there. Rick Bonus, put him behind the bench.
Mhm.
So just bring them all back. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have you covered every step of the way this Bruin season, be it a coaching change, maybe trades down the line, features, recaps, columns, all that good stuff. You can read over at Boston.com. The Boston Globe.
Yes, Dave Lewis too. Get Dave Lewis on the bench.
I think our someone's already like bring back Jim Montgomery. So we're doing well. But yes, you can read my stuff, Evan, over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. We thank you for those who tuned in live. For those who watch it later, thank you as well. And that's been Bruins Beat. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky, Bruins Beat listeners. Have a great rest of your week.